Up next, we take a look at some recent findings that suggest that wearables like Fitbit and Apple Watch may make it more likely for people to stick to their workouts. All right, Tunde, I want to jump right into our second part of our discussion. Briefly, we saw an article in Conversation, the website, The Conversation, that laid out some research that suggests that wearable fitness trackers, in whatever form, whether it be the smartwatches or the dedicated fitness trackers, wearing those and the interfaces that they have and what they do can help people stick to their workouts like significantly, like three times as people are 3 times as likely to stick to them, or 7 times as likely to stick to them, and so forth, with kind of the programs that are built into there. What do you think of these studies, or the study that particularly that was cited there, or the studies in general about fitness trackers being, people more likely to stick at with their workouts? Is this just marketing, on the sneak for people to buy fitness trackers, or do you think, there's something to this?
I was going to give you a straight answer until you brought that last part out. Of course, with industry, I'll have to be suspicious that they want to sell more of their products. So yeah, I'm sure there's part of that there. But my overarching initial answer was going to be, actually, I think that there's truth behind the idea that fitness trackers, and I'll put up a picture of my Apple Watch or put my wrist up to show everyone that's watching the YouTube show that I am wearing an Apple Watch now. So my point is just saying, not to toot on myself or Apple, but the idea that I can anecdotally discuss this because it's something that I've seen since I bought this Apple Watch. I'm a little bit more conscious on certain of these things than I was. And I'm someone that was culturally conditioned through how I've lived my life to exercise and be conscious about my own physical health. Yeah. So I would say, yes, I think that there is truth to that. And I also think, yes, the industry wants to sell more.
A little from college.
Two things can be true at once. Yeah.
Well, no, I this stood out to me because I can see how, and I have an Apple Watch as well, and I can see how that changed my own behavior. And like you, I was a person that worked out already. But once I got a fitness tracker, once I got the Apple Watch a few years back, what I noticed is that because I was like, okay, I'll use this thing, when I take a walk or when I do my lifts or whatever, I'll let it track me. And like the first time I did it, first like month I did it, I saw, okay, I got like 17, 20 workouts. Or maybe I had like 21 workouts or something like that in that first month between walks and, which are low, just a walk is, kind of a stress kind of thing. And then actually intense exercise. So between the two, I had about 21. I was like, hey, maybe I'll try to go for, between the two, it was the next month was like a February. I was like, hey, I'll do 28 in 28 days. And so it actually not in a like, it didn't make me do anything, but it made me want to try to push myself a little bit because this thing is keeping track of all this stuff. And I can see, what I'm doing and what my average is, my heart rate and all this stuff. So it became like a toy that I was playing with to, as far as all my the things that I wanted to do anyway. And maybe I do it a little bit more because of that. So I think though, the nuance here probably matters. It probably, and I read the study, or I read the article on the study and kind of looked at the background of this. It seems like there's 2 factors that really matter because it really gets into it as far as you're talking about behavioral change. And behavioral change, just having a little extra toy isn't itself going to change the behavior. So I think it's whether the type of person that you are is a person who is maybe, setting goals for yourself already. And then this allows you to then set goals with yourself in that arena and actually track your progress on these goals. So if you're that kind of person, I can definitely see how it can play out. And then also what was discussed in the article is how it can give you reminders, or that you can have these programs set up and have people that maybe need a little bit of a push. It can help them as well. So I think that they offer a lot of opportunity, for you to help yourself, but it still requires you to do it. And to some degree, it still requires you to want to do it. Like there's no substitution for just good old fashioned want to.
Yeah.
And so if you're not bringing that to the table, it seems like you're still going to be, this isn't going to be some panacea that just like, oh, I got the watch, bing, I'm in the gym all the time.
I think that's a great point. Because to just the conversation we just had in the first part of this discussion was kind of the idea of the microwave, right? And I think you're right that we need to be careful always as in humanity, reminding ourselves that there's no secret sauce really to solving all these problems with one stroke. And so it's kind of like the stock market. I tell people sometimes, You're not going to look at one indicator and that's going to tell you everything you need to know whether an investment is good or bad. There's a kind of an ecosystem of information, and you're making an educated assumption when you're making those kind of decisions. And so I think with this body stuff, it's very similar. We need to remember that there's not one silver bullet that's going to solve it. And I think you bring up a very valid point that this helps people that are already maybe in the mindset of going a certain direction, might help them to pursue that with all the other distractions we have in modern life, versus someone who has no desire at all to exercise or look at their health a certain way. And as you're talking, you know what, actually the analogy I thought of is actually Audible. The audio books, because I've complained to you in recent years, right, that I can't read a book like I used to 10, 15 years ago. I think my brain has changed from all this online stuff. I can't focus, sit down for an hour and just focus like I used to. And then also some of it is where I'm at in my life as a middle-aged guy with a business and a family. It's a time issue. So because I have the desire to still want to learn or maybe listen to good nonfiction stuff as a way to deal with my downtime, Audible has helped me as a person that wants to continue being exposed to books and literature, but in the modern world, it's not as easy as maybe it was when I was younger. And I feel like these fitness apps,
example. Like you can do it, but it also allows you to do it at times when you may not have been. Like if you're doing something, some mindless,
because I can listen to an audiobook when I'm falling asleep.
Yeah. Like exactly doing like you said, like you're busy and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, I got all this stuff around the house to do now. So I can actually listen to a book. I can pop
in my headphones and listen to a book. You know? And so the same thing, James, I would say is I didn't realize this.
But you have to want to, though, to your point. You have, like, you want to do it. You're trying to figure out ways to do it.
That's why your comments made me realize that the fitness app itself isn't what it's. The person still has to have the habits or the desire. They just may be in a position where they can no longer, because of life circumstances, like me with reading books, they just can't go to the gym as much. Or like you said, instead of, here's a good example. I stopped going to the LA Fitness, which is only 1.5 miles from my house. It's not far, but it's a 10 to 15 minute drive with the traffic lights. And then I got to get in there. I got to get kind of warmed up and go. And then I got to come home. So that's 30 to 45 minutes I'm saving just by me buying some dumbbells and putting
of non-workout time. That's the key piece. Right. It's like, I want to do a 30-minute workout. It's going to take me an hour and 10 minutes, you know?
Yeah. And so one of the things when I first got my Apple Watch, I've only had this for about 1.5 years. So still newer in my life. I'm not one of these people that's been wearing this thing for 10 years. And I remember, one of the things I've learned is that sitting for long periods of time just isn't good, right? It's good to stand up periodically. So when my Apple Watch was asking me, when I was setting it up and programming it, it asked me, do I want to put a reminder to stand every so often? So in my mind, I just said, yeah, why not? If I don't want to stand every hour because I got to sleep. So let me say out of 12 hours a day, I just want to stand at least 1 hour at a time. I just picked that randomly.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny, James? Because I got this stupid standing desk. My watch will bother me and it'll vibrate and I'll look and it'll say time to stand. And I'll be like, oh, and I'll stand up and I'll just start for 5 minutes standing and then I'll sit back down. And what's cool is it's that dopamine hit. At the end of the day, it'll tell me, you reached your goal. Congrats. And this little circle thing. And that makes me feel good. Like, that's what I'm feeling like. It's like, all right, that helps. That pushes, that makes me feel like I did something good and I want to feel that feeling tomorrow.
That was the next piece I was going to go to is the positive reinforcement it can give you when you do succeed or when you do, like, sometimes I set goals for myself and then I'll see like, oh, I want to get when I'm doing this kind of a workout, I want to make sure I keep my heart rate or my average heart rate at this. Like if I'm doing a swimming workout or doing a sprinting workout, those, I can get a really high heart rate with those. And then I'll be like, okay, well, when I'm lifting, I want to have my breaks be shorter so that I can try to get the heart rate up a little higher. And again, all that's the opposite. When I'm walking, it's like totally different. It's none of that stuff. That's like recovery, active recovery. But like when I hit those goals, or if I get, Apple has that ring thing, and it's like, oh yeah, I get all my rings or something like that. I'm like, yes, that's a good day, man. And so that the ability to, and it's not like if without that, it's not like you can't have that, but to actually have it being measured by quote unquote a third party and then telling you, hey, yeah, you did hit your goal. There is something to that as far as that. And so while the want to is a piece, I thought that the way that it can actually allow you to kind of change your own behavior, which you just kind of indicated with the standing thing, And then, or how you can, design it to whether it be the Apple or the other brands of it, that you can design it to remind you when to work out, or all this type of stuff. It does give you the tools that if you wanted to kind of change your behavior, you could do it. And actually, the piece, we'll have it in the show notes, talks about that. And like, there's other pieces that are required for behavior change, and they kind of go through them. But the watch or the tracker can be set up to help you with that, to hit those marks, so you can actually try to change your behavior, which is what they observed with the ability for these people, and that are being studied, so many more of them than the baseline, to continue doing their fitness regimen after 6 months or after 12 months. And, and it's like, man, a statistically significant portion of people were still doing stuff, even compared to the control group. And it's like, well, that's something. So the other part about this story, though, I mean, we've seen this. This isn't the first time this idea has been raised. And in fact, we've seen even politicians talk about like, oh, hey, maybe, or government officials talk about like, hey, maybe we should make everybody wear a smartwatch. Or we've seen insurance companies, health insurance or whatever, being like, hey, you can wear this thing, and kind of, like we'll talk saving you money if you want to wear this thing, and we get to see the data and so forth. So where do you think, like the kind of the impetus for this type of thing should be coming from? Do you think this is something that maybe governments or private businesses maybe should be looking at and trying to maybe cajole people to being healthier? Or do you think that those type of, do you think that should be a hands-off type of thing, and it should remain more personal?
Look, I don't think there's an environment that exists where the government is hands off on things it doesn't want to have its hands on. So I would say,
man, there's lots of people that are small government, right? They say they are, at least.
Let me just speak for me and not 300 million people. Yes, I would say this. It's nuanced anytime we want to say, should the government get involved? So let me start with that, and not just say yes blanketly. But I would say, I'd lean into the idea that, probably because here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it from this angle. The government, large corporations, what do they have the power to do in a society is affect the culture, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
We talk about things like the use of the tax code to direct how we spend our money. So I've bragged a lot on this show and different discussions about how I use things like bonus depreciation, buying certain assets and then deducting against future income, and I don't pay a lot of taxes using legal loopholes like that. So I was thinking about it as I was just preparing for today, James, and I thought, the government could do that instead of always treating my class, the entrepreneur class, as holier than thou, and the employee class as the ones that, get the S end of the stick in terms of taxes. What if the government said, hey, in a way to start promoting preventative healthcare and people being healthier from the start so they don't show up to a doctor or a hospital all messed up by the time they're in their 60s, we're going to give everybody up to $25,000 if they invest in home gym equipment, a Peloton, whatever it is, a dollar for dollar tax deduction. So somebody making $100,000 a year that might not feel like, hey, I can go buy a $1,500 bike and do this. Well, if you can spend $5,000 this year and take that off your taxes, maybe that'll incentivize your behavior. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's all. I'm just giving this idea that we could think and imagine new realities if we wanted to, but we don't.
It's a really good point because I would have much hesitation for businesses to compel people to do this, to force people to do this, for government to force people to do this. But I think it's a really good idea that if this type of approach can make people healthier, and it's in our interest to, from a societal standpoint, for people to be more interested or invested or able to have better health outcomes, then incentivizing people as opposed to compelling them would be a powerful role or powerful thing the government can do or private companies can do, incentivizing them. Of course, the issue that you run into with this type of thing is, okay, well, are they going to then start wanting to see everybody's numbers and see everybody's stuff, which I think is a very legitimate concern. And I wouldn't want that, at least. I wouldn't want if I want to wear this thing. And I mean, some of that you're trusting whatever fitness company you're dealing with anywhere, whichever fitness tracking company you're dealing with. You have to put a level of trust. If you're going to let them know your heart rate at all times and when all this other type of thing, where you are, all that kind of stuff, you're putting a level of trust into them already. But I think that beyond just being able to look at the whether we can force people to do something, there are other ways to be creative and say, okay, well, let's make it so that people want to do this. Even beyond, so I remember, just in the 90s, you had the all these campaigns that were, now they're funded from lawsuits against tobacco companies, but these lawsuits, the tobacco companies pay all this money, and then they use this to advertise nonstop people not to smoke, and that was very effective at reducing smoking. So, I mean, even if it's just ad campaigns touting the benefits of these things, getting people to buy in more from a cultural standpoint, all of that stuff can be very helpful. And it can be the role of the government if it's going to be involved in that. It could be the role of the government to help promote that kind of change. And the benefit of the government, supposedly, is that the government can do things that will help people without necessarily always having to have something in exchange. Private companies, you're going to have a harder time getting that kind of ethos through. But for the government, this is the kind of thing that they should be able to do and not necessarily be saying, okay, well, what's in it for me? What's in it for me is this is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And the government should want better for the people. And if this is a way to do it, it can find ways to lean into it that don't involve making people do something. It doesn't always have to be that, like you said. There's a lot of ways.
Can I add
so any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yes, I do. As you finished that eloquent speech there, I want to remind you that this is a country for the corporation, by the corporations.
That's right. Speech isn't words. Speech is money.
So the fact that corporations can now pay for the government they want means that if the government does this, they're just going to get lobbied by corporations to still do whatever they
say. What's in it for the corporations? Say what's in it for me? Yeah.
And I'll finish with this though on a serious note. That's why I started my thing with kind of starting to preface and say I would support it, but yeah, anything with the government is nuanced. But I think you put a nice bow on the conversation when you said, if the government can just create incentives and not compel people, that is, and I think that's in a society like ours, if we don't want to have a true authoritarian system where the government does come and say, you have to do this. And I think that's an example of during COVID, the government didn't say people are going to go to jail if you don't get a vaccine. What the government said to people who were employed by the government was, if you don't have a vaccine, don't come to the office, right? Like you may lose your job, but you still were free not to get a vaccine. So if you incentivize people, we also need to be prepared that not 100% of the population is going to get on board with this. So
but part of this, that's why it's nuanced. That was a means of coercion, but also it's hard to make that comparison though, because that's an emergency situation versus this isn't an emergency situation. So in an emergency situation, conceivably you give a little more deference. In a non-emergency situation, there's no deference. It's like, hey, you gotta lean the other way. But I know we gotta wrap this up, man.
Yeah, I would say this is as non-emergency as climate change, meaning it's slow and it's happening. No, but I mean, serious. It's slow and it happens over time, but our health has gotten much worse over the last 100 years. So,
So, I mean, and the taxpayer does end up paying more for that. And so there is an interest. But yeah, figuring out a way to do it, to make it a thing to do that people want to do, as opposed to trying to come in with some coercion, I think is an important part of that. So, but I think we can wrap this topic from there. We appreciate everyone for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Till next time, I'm James Keys.
I'm Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk soon.